My name is Sally Christeson. I'm the founder and CEO of Argent, a women's workwear brand whose mission is to remove barriers for women. I'd like to welcome Anna Steffeney. She's the executive director of farmtech.org.
Famtech.
Oh, Famtech.
Don't worry, it happens all the time.
We're going to talk about farm tech today. Caregiving, farm, famtech.org, and a passionate entrepreneur focused on improving the lives of working families. And I'm also excited to welcome Reshma Saujani. Reshma is the founder of Girls Who Code and Moms First, and the host of the podcast, My So-Called Midlife. So I'm honored to be here today to discuss a topic that is so close to my heart. The idea for Argent came about over 10 years ago when I was working in tech, and I was a consumer who saw how women were underserved in the workwear market, and how boundaries to success, both unspoken and overt, are holding women back from their ambitions. And that's like hardly scratching the surface of how women are underserved. And this was all before I became a mom of two. I believe all of us are here at CareFest because we feel a need to better support parents and caregivers in our workplaces and in society at large. So to start the conversation, can each of you share a bit about your personal stories and what led you to be a part of today's conversation about care?
Thanks. Hi, everyone. I had my first son while living abroad in Germany, and I was entitled to a year of paid leave. I was able to navigate motherhood, not worry about expenses, my career, my job was held for me. Working for a large US tech company, but in a different country. Fast forward, moved back to the US, was considering having my second child, and I was told to keep it hidden as long as possible. And I didn't understand why or how, and that was my journey. And it sort of radicalized me, like, wait a second, how could it be the same company, the same life event, just different country? And I ended up leaving my job, reading all these wonderful books from some of you in the audience that inspired me to start a company called Leave Logic, which helps employees navigate paid family medical leave in a confidential way without having to disclose to HR that you need to care for a loved one, or you're having mental illness, or you're thinking about having a child. And so I do believe there's a role for technology as a form of advocacy. Getting that phone in the hand of someone instead of looking down the hallway and just doing what that guy did is really powerful. And so that's why I'm thrilled to do the work I do today at famtech.org. We're helping over 300 members, 200 companies solve the needs for caregivers. We want to ensure there is an innovation ecosystem building for the caregiver. And so, like I said, I learned very quickly on that there's many versions of advocacy. We're all in this sort of game, like we have this Trivial Pursuit pie, if you remember, we got to put the triangles in. I feel like we're one of the triangles, technology, policy, innovation, investment, advocacy. We all need to be playing together of this game in pursuit of a sustainable care infrastructure.
It's powerful. So hi, I'm Reshma. I spent the past, before I started Moms First, I spent a decade of my career building an organization called Girls Who Code. And I'm the daughter of refugees. And when I started Girls Who Code, the main driver was really making sure that girls like me, Black and brown girls, immigrant girls, poor girls, had the opportunity to march up into the middle class. My dad used to always tell me, Reshma, you have three choices. You can be a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer, right? Because he felt like those were the jobs that would make sure that I wasn't economically fragile. And so in building Girls Who Code, we taught over half a million girls in the United States to code, reached billions. And before the pandemic in 2020, we were on top of the world. And then the pandemic hit. And I was having my second child. And I was finally going to take that paternity leave that I never took with my first one. And COVID changed all that. And I found myself having to go back to work when my baby Sali was a few weeks old to save Girls Who Code from being shut down. for any of you who are in the girls advocacy space or the women's space, the pandemic was just brutal, brutal for our organizations. We saw everything that we have built just almost deplete overnight. And one of the things that was just revolutionary for me as both a mom and an activist in the pandemic is how crises impact women and girls because we don't have a structure of care. Let me explain what I mean. We talk a lot about the lack of girls' education and it creating a generational cycle of poverty. We think about how that happens in India, we think about that happens in Africa, but I saw that happen in the Bronx. So many of my girls were on their way to major in computer science at college, but because daycare centers were shut down and schools were shut down and their mothers are essential workers, they couldn't go to college. They had to stay home and take care of their siblings. And I saw how that impacted both my girls and their mothers, and how for so long in this country, we have just been tricking women into thinking the problem is you, right? The reason why you can't pay the bills, the reason why you're struggling, the reason why you haven't got that job that you've been fighting for is because, well, you don't have enough confidence. You didn't power pose in the morning. You didn't color code your calendar. It's your damn fault. And it's not. The reason why we don't have equality is because we have a broken structure of care, because we don't have paid leave and we don't have child care. Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, and I'm gonna finish in a second before I just start preaching and don't shut up, it's just, I thought that when the pandemic happened, we saw it. We saw it through our Zoom screens, that we as mothers were balancing having a job and kids and nobody was saving us. But then 2 weeks ago, the Bureau of Labor Statistics released their jobs numbers. And yet again, we saw 400,000 women drop out of the workforce overnight, mostly women of young children, and 500,000 men entered the workforce. That's a strategy. That's a strategy that is out there of keeping us poor, keeping us exhausted, and keeping us without support. And so this is something that we have to pay attention to, and it is deeply, deeply connected to the lack of childcare.
I think you both touched on this, but I want to hear a little bit more about it. So I believe that having access to care is just good for business. To me, that's very common sense for productivity, for retention, et cetera. Would you both agree, and how do you think we can make the business case for care? I'll start with you, Anna.
Yeah, so a lot of my work focuses on translating sometimes for the CFO of an employer around the productivity gains, the engagement, the talent attraction, the talent retention. I think these are compelling. It's sort of our version 1 of how to sell this business case, of how to get people who haven't typically been allies to the table, and understand that this is a workforce development issue, this is an economic development issue. Maybe we'll talk a little bit later about market issues, but I think where we need to go next is that narrative has momentum. Businesses are starting to learn and understand that this is a true impact to their own success, having access to care. But they don't have clear measurement, and so I would really like to see us expand the data elements, how we're able to, at an employer level or at the national level, have real-time data around the impacts of caregiving.
That's powerful. Yeah, I think that why business is so critical in this conversation is because I think for far too long, we've thought about these issues, in particular childcare, as a personal problem that a family has to fix and not an economic issue that our nation has to solve. And to me, we're never gonna win childcare or paid leave, quite frankly, until we agree on that. And so when we started building Moms First, I think the first thing that I saw, and I saw this through Girls Who Code. Girls Who Code was built, all those girls were taught because companies said, oh damn, I need more engineers. And half the population is sitting on the sidelines. They didn't do it out of the goodness of their hearts. They did it because they needed to find more workers. And when I looked at kind of in our movement, what I felt like what could really accelerate things is the business voice. So the first thing we did was 4 years ago, we built the first and only national business coalition on childcare. For 1 year, I barely could get 7 companies to sign up. Now, 4 years later, we have over 200 companies that are part of our business coalition. And they're not only increasing childcare benefits for their employees, but they're entering the national conversation. So, for example, we brought these businesses to Capitol Hill for the very first time to lobby both Democrats and Republicans about the importance of public investment in childcare. That had never been done before. So that business voice is really critical. I think to your point, this is the one area where there's data missing. There is data missing to prove the economic case. So we did the first ever ROI report demonstrating that you make a return of 425% as a business if you invest in childcare. We're going to be releasing a report this year, which we're so excited about, with McKinsey for frontline workers. 22% of workers work in 11 jobs. And the reason why they miss work is because of childcare. And so for companies that are, for factories, for retail workers, for people that are on front lines, it makes sense to invest in childcare investments for those workers. And I'm really excited when we put out this report because I think it's going to make that case. And I think in the same way that the ROI report did in increasing investment in childcare, we're going to see this happen again for frontline workers. Finally, going back to the business case, as we are just not making that much progress federally on investing in childcare, the fight is in the states. And one of the things, if you've learned in seeing how childcare policy is passed in the states, both in Vermont and in New Mexico, it's because businesses finally got on board. And the sad reality is oftentimes politicians will listen to business leaders over their own mothers. Just true. And so we're about to, and so we at Moms First has really been building the playbook on how to do that in states across the country. And so we're doing that here in New York. We have finally elected a mayor who has no children, but is a full-throated advocate on childcare. That is because of every single advocate in this room. Every single advocate in this room has made that happen. I say this as a New Yorker, when New York moves, the whole country moves, right? So we got to make sure that promises turn into reality. Mm-hmm. We got to make sure that universal child care is not just a talking point on a campaign trail, but it is a reality for every family here in New York City. And so we at Moms First have been tirelessly working to mobilize business leaders. We wrote an op-ed with Kathy Wild, if you know, in the New York City, Kathy Wild runs businesses, finally saying, yes, childcare is the thing that we actually have to do. And so in the next 100 days, we've been working really hard to broker an agreement between the governor and the mayor and business leaders on what we can actually get done. And so I do think, yes, business is very important.
Okay, yeah, so as the care economy grows and there's an opportunity to create good jobs, support women's economic leadership and mobility, and support small businesses, how do we ensure that we seize these opportunities, and how do we make sure opportunity is distributed fairly? From an entrepreneur's point of view, are there ways that you'd propose to address this challenge?
Yeah, I think childcare is a broken market.
Yeah.
The traditional supply and demand model sets the wrong price. It's unattainable. And there is opportunity for market innovation, not just tools, not just policy, but we can think about markets differently. And I just like to highlight, in 2012, there was a Nobel Prize in economics for an economist who developed a new way to match kidney donors and unlocked the matching algorithm. And why? Because ethically, we have a challenge with setting a price point on a kidney. And so I think there's opportunity for us to look at the value exchange that's happening currently between employers with their workforce being able to get to work because they have care, just like that bridge. Communities that have access to care. We are not capturing that value today in the market construct that we've built. And so if we can look at ways to bring policy and market innovation and solutions together, I think we have a chance to solve some of this.
Yeah, that's powerful. You know, I think the other thing that I've been thinking a lot about, and I say this to a room full of very tired people, and I am very, very tired because I think this is an incredibly exhausting moment. If you love this country, which I think every single person in this room does, is that, you know, we have to remember that we have to play defense and offense at the same time. And a lot of us in this room have been doing a lot of defense and trying to save Head Start and SNAP benefits, Medicaid, but we also got to play offense. And one of the things I think a lot about is what's happening with women. You know, years ago, the Republican Party looked and saw how men were dying of suicide, how they were unemployed, how they were depressed and anxious, and they said, let's go get them. Let's go get them. Let's go speak to them. Let's hold them. Let's make them feel seen. And they captured them. And they captured them, and that had disastrous effects on every single one of us and the people that we are fighting for. I want to be very clear here. They are doing the exact same thing with women. It was not a mistake that they picked Erica Kirk to run Turning Point. That was not a misstep. A lot of people said, that was stupid. What young man is going to listen to her? They weren't trying to talk to young men. They got them. They're trying to get women. And at a moment right now where the same thing is happening to women, we are exhausted. We are tired. Our reproductive rights are being taken away. Our educational opportunities are being taken away. You know, 13 states have made it illegal to have Girls Who Code clubs. And not a damn person is talking about it. Okay? When they released the report that 400,000 people, women, dropped out of the workforce, not a damn person said anything about it. Every single philanthropic organization, instead of increasing their investment in women and girls, they're taking it away. And so while we are just pretending not to see what is going on, they are paying attention. And they are grabbing them. And they are getting them. I spent 2 weeks on the road meeting with MAGA moms. They're being held right now while we are pushing women away. So we got to listen up before it's too late. We cannot take women for granted. We can't take our issues for granted. And we have got to play offense.
I'm going to be honest, I find you both to be so inspirational, and the work you're doing is so incredible, and I could talk to you for hours, and unfortunately we are very tight on time, so I'm going to ask you both, because I do want to get to these points, we're going to do a bit of a rapid fire on the last two questions. The first is going to be for you, and the second for you, Reshma. So Anna, you've been at the forefront of designing tech-enabled solutions for working families. Can you share a bit about what that looks like on an individual and societal level? And as the care economy grows, where do you see the greatest need for innovation? No, just in 1 minute or less.
Yeah, 1 minute. I think the most important part out of all of that is growth does not equal justice. Like, it's not just. So how do we create inclusivity in tech design and policy? I believe in many, almost all of our member companies believe in technology's role to increase access. Right, and how do we measure that? How do we incorporate that? And not necessarily the what of policy, but the how. And so it's really imperative right now, and I think Anne-Marie Slaughter's done a great job of exploring public interest tech, that we lean into what that means, especially in the age of AI and aging in place and all of these mega trends that we're seeing. We can look at technology slightly differently than maybe we have in the past.
Yeah. Listen, I think that one of the things I really urge us all to do, and I think IGN's doing such an incredible job on this, and Caring Cross Generations is doing such an incredible job on this, is that we have to keep telling stories. Culture eats policy for breakfast every single day. And right now, the culture, we're not in the culture. We're just not. I don't know what happened, but they have captured it. And we need to get it back. And so that is why, as an activist, I also do a podcast. That is why I spend a lot of time thinking about content and figuring out how to speak and move people. It's why we're launching a documentary, the first ever documentary about American motherhood, about the culture wars of American motherhood, because we have to capture people's hearts and minds back. And the second thing I want to do is, I want to just say is, we have to do it with love, not anger. I'm tired of being angry. I'm tired of having rage. I want to have love. I want to cry. I want to see when children are being ripped from their mothers. I want to be mad about it, but I want to be sad about it. And want other people to look at what we're doing in our country and say, no, 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 not my nation. And so we have to tell these stories, we have to feel these stories, and we have to speak these stories authentically. I don't think people want to be this way. I really don't.
I want to ask one quick question, and they're probably going to yell at me, but I want to build off of this. Where are we getting it right?
I mean, I think we're getting it right in this room. Like, everyone here is, you know, when you care for children, when you care for elderly parents, it's like you do it because that is decent, that is moral, that is integrity. Like, all of us are in a movement of righteousness, of love, of decency. And so the more we share our stories, the more we tell our stories, the more, but we have to invest. And one of the things that we all know is like there isn't a lot of no one's saying, here, take $1 million and go tell a bunch of stories about moms and grandparents. You know, but you can't, you need that type of investment to tell those stories. And we need to make that be a priority and make that be important. And so part of what I'm saying is keep going where you're going. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep finding synergies in order to do it. Keep finding aspects of creativity, and don't let them make you believe that we hate each other. Don't let them make you believe that. We love each other, and we want to care for one another.
Anna Steffeney, famtech.org, Reshma Saujani, Moms First, My So-Called Midlife. Thank you both. I'm honored to share a stage with you. I'm just in awe of the work that you're doing. Thanks for being part of this discussion, and a huge thanks to Caring Across Generations for having us and for their vital work.
Thank you.